What spoke to me the most was a guest from Africa named Jacob. He was talking about how God was calling him to ministry and how the answer was very clear. And he brought the example of Peter, how the Lord was giving Peter direct instructions of where to go and where not to go. So that really spoke to me today.
It was really to find how Paul, being in prison, he still preached to Felix as a ruler at that time in the Palestine. But that was a really big encouragement for me. It doesn't matter where I am, in what problem I'm going through, still not be ashamed of the gospel.
Something that stood out to me from the sermon was righteousness in comparison to self-righteousness. And self-righteousness is when we define ourselves and we convince ourselves that we are good, but our goodness is not enough to give us righteousness in reality. But when we have true righteousness, it comes from Christ, and He defines what righteousness is. And once we know what righteousness is through Christ's eyes, we can make the correct decisions and not delay them.
One of the things that I took away for myself is how in the story of Paul and Felix, God started to fulfill the promise He gave Paul earlier, where he would stand before the kings. And with Paul standing before Felix, that promise being fulfilled. Also, what I realized is how much grace God gave to this man named Felix, who was, as we learned today, was just a corrupt individual. But God gave him 2 years of grace with a preacher like Paul, where he had access to his teaching anytime he wanted. And he used that opportunity, but in the wrong motives. He actually wanted to get some money out of Paul. But the amount of God's grace is just amazing. And then the last thing I took away, of course, is self-control, because there are things in my life that I'd like to have more control of. Some things of flesh that I'm still struggling and working on. I was encouraged to continue with that, and through the Holy Spirit, God has continued to do the working in my life.